Yo, YouTube, what's up? This is gonna be a very different video. It's gonna be like a talking piece type of more edited video. I've seen a lot of people struggle this split with AD Udyr, and even though on paper nothing much has changed, the big thing that changed being Ghost, but we will get into that in a second. But a lot of people tell me, man, I climbed to XYZ rank, but I had to give up on AD. I did XYZ, these builds don't work, this doesn't work, this doesn't work. What is the right AD Udyr build? And I've been struggling myself, guys. I have been struggling to find the right AD Udyr build, but I think I got to a point now after ruining my main account and having a 44% win rate. Almost hit master though, right off the bat when I played the right build. I got to a point now where I can actually explain to you guys what, in my opinion, the issue is with AD Udyr right now and how we can fix it by itemizing correctly and having the right mindset when it comes to AD Udyr. So what changed in Split 2 of Season 14? The biggest thing that changed in Split 2 Season 14 is that Ghost got a massive nerf. Basically, why did they nerf Ghost? Ghost was too picked on every class because it didn't have a punishment for ranged characters, right? So they nerfed Ghost to basically make this summoner spell almost obsolete. So the cooldown went up by 30 seconds. It's now 240 seconds instead of 210 seconds, and the duration got down by 5 seconds. Now, how does Udyr as a whole use Ghost as a summoner spell? Not only do you use Ghost to get faster to a play, which the 15 seconds to 10-second duration decrease actually impacts a lot, but also you use Ghost in combination with your E and your slow or whatever to be sticky and to get summoner spells from enemy champions, right? Because Ghost has a way lower cooldown than, let's say, Flash. So you can like force a Flash, maybe still get a kill because you're so sticky, and then basically execute your kit in that way. Now that's not really possible anymore. Not only is the CD increased, meaning you're not gonna get these threshold windows anymore where like you get somebody's Flash and then they're in a position soon enough with your Ghost being off cooldown again where you can punish them having Flash instead of Ghost. But also the duration got decreased, meaning I can't have the extra 5 seconds, run up to a dragon play real quick and still have 10 seconds of duration in combat stickiness mobility. So Ghost became almost obsolete for Udyr. Most Udyr players go Flash, most Udyr players play Phoenix Udyr, right? Which makes sense, because Phoenix Udyr has sticking potential on his R and overall has more utility and range. Like you just don't have to be, you don't need a lot of steps to execute Phoenix gameplay. You can just throw an R2 into a team or, you know, just stay on them because they have so much. So you don't actually need that many steps in order to fulfill your gameplay. If you have like one good R2, slow a lot of people and damage them, you're basically good already. So why does AD Udyr struggle so much with taking Flash instead of Ghost? AD Udyr has way more steps to execute his gameplay and therefore needs more time / without no Ghost, it's really hard to pull off a Flash stun play and get all the steps in. So what are AD Udyr's steps? AD Udyr has to auto attack, in my opinion, at least 4 times, meaning 1 stun into 3 Q auto attacks to guarantee a kill on a target, which most of the time a Flash stun just isn't enough time with the 075 stun and a clunky auto attack animation on your E. A Flash stun is just not gonna cut it for AD Udyr, right? Like you're not gonna be able to execute your kit. You're not gonna be able to basically do what AD Udyr does, which is auto attack, and through said auto attacks, you apply damage and kill people, which AD Udyr is the only thing that makes AD Udyr better than Phoenix Udyr in that regard, is that you have a lot of agency about who you kill and how fast you kill them. Now without Ghost, there's no stickiness potential, there is no running up to targets, there is no forcing a Flash, because you also have to realize everybody goes Flash now. So if you run up to a Caitlyn, she's gonna net you, right? after you flash on her, probably because you can't even get in range, she's gonna net you, you're slowed, and then she still has flash up while auto attack. So it's very, very hard to execute AD Udyr's gameplay without constant mobility and stickiness. Now, what would AD Udyr need in order to function without having to use shitty Ghost? Because that's really not an option, guys. You shouldn't use Ghost anymore. Ghost is pretty fucking bad right now. Udyr needs sticking power, right? Udyr needs gap closing power. Udyr needs good early power spikes. And that kind of sums up what AD Udyr needs from his build and his setup in order to actually execute his gameplay and make use of his entire kit, right? Now, most people right now take Water Walking and Celerity. Now, let me say why I actually hate this rune page on AD Udyr. It makes a lot of sense on Phoenix Udyr in my opinion, even in that case approach velocity and magical footwear are kind of better. But let me explain to you why Water Walking and Celerity is kind of a meme in my opinion on AD Udyr. Now, I have nothing against Water Walking. It's a great rune. It has a very strict condition though. You have to be in the river in order to make this rune work. If you're not in the river, you're not gonna get. You don't have water walking. It doesn't exist, right? Which means that our sticking power, since we don't have ghost and we have flash, and we don't have approach, and we don't have magical footwear, our entire sticking power outside of river comes from our E and our celerity. Now the issue with celerity is it gives you 1% overall movement speed, which is okay, and then it gives you 7% effectiveness to your bonus mobility, meaning your bonus mobility is basically just you press E, right, you get mobility from that, and the mobility you get from pressing E is increased by 7%. This puts Udyr in a very, very awkward position sometimes, where you can't orb walk, aka kite into the enemy so they can't get out of your auto attack range, because when you're in your queue, right, you have no mobility, no bonus mobility really other than your boots, you actually don't get any sticking power from celerity. So you get into these moments where even if an enemy if Viego uses his shroud or his W, you have to walk up to them again with your E and stun them with the clunky animation, wasting like 2 potential 3 auto attacks on AD Udyr just to get in range again and auto attack them. That's why approach velocity works like a charm on AD Udyr, because you have a red buff on them, you get 15% movement speed permanently towards them, you can stay in your queue and actually execute AD Udyr's gameplay, which is getting your Qs off, getting your auto attacks off, right? You don't have to, like, orb walking is much better with approach velocity, and that basically kind of sums up that entire point I'm trying to make about water walking versus celerity. Like, water walking is great, celerity really isn't on AD Udyr. Now let's get into what builds are being promoted by myself and other AD Udyr content creators, and let me explain to you why I think these builds kind of miss the mark with the issues I explained earlier. We have Trinity Force and Stride Breaker, AD Udyr's best build last split, which is still good. It's still good. It's very, very expensive though. You have to pay like 6.6k gold for both items, which is a lot of moolah. Like, you either get a lot of kills early game, which we are going to get into a second why you're probably not going to get a lot of kills early game with this build, but also you have a very limited gap closing potential with that, because you only get mobility in combat, which isn't really enough for AD Udyr. AD Udyr, as we discussed earlier, needs gap closing and sticking power. This build only gives you insane sticking power because of the double auto attack movement speed you get from Trinity Force and Stride Breaker, but it gives you almost no gap closing other than Stride Breaker slow, which basically means you're already in your Phoenix range, which means that you would proc approach velocity if you go this rune anyways, and you would already gap close. So very good to build still, probably still up there for his bruiser builds, but very hard to execute without having the ghost for gap closing. Kraken Slayer plus Bruiser, NK God Deer, Gendir Khan's build is really, is the highest DPS you can have. It's AD Udyr, but like you can't compare it really to other builds when it comes to just pure DPS. It wins. It has very great mobility, but here's where I see the flaws with this build. You pay 3.1k gold, which is a lot of gold, for an item that gives you no tankiness, no CDR, decent mobility, insane DPS, but it just makes you squishy for so long, right? Instead of like this item being cheap and you get all these stats, which kind of would make sense, this item makes you squishy for 3.1k gold. Like imagine you would build a, you can't really say Trinity Force, but imagine you're building like something like a Sterox Gauge or something, but it just doesn't have health. And for all this gold you invest, you're just gonna be squishy as fuck. Yes, the mobility compensates a little bit for that, but in my opinion, it doesn't fix the core issue, which is, yes, you have high accessibility, but you have bad stats. So you just replace the issue of mobility with bad stats, basically, in a sense, right? You have no tankiness for way too long. But this is still a very, very good option, and I've heard a lot of you guys have great success with that, which is good. So this is still like a very viable build. Then we have Trinity Force plus Titanic Hydra, which I was promoting at the start of the split too. It has some glaring issues. It has very good stats. It has high DPS. It has an auto reset, which means that like if you get into range, you actually do get more auto attacks off because you have the auto attack reset with the active. But it's extremely pricey. Again, 6.6k gold, which is very, 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 very high price to ask for when you have so little mobility with this setup. Like you have almost no mobility from your items at all. Your sticking power is okay because of Trinity Force, but it's very hard for you to get onto targets unless they're already melee. And if you are low mobility on AD Udyr, that usually translates to you just getting less kills in the early game because people can just kite you out, stall for their laners to help, etc, etc. So you have less accessibility to kills. Less accessibility to kills means you get less gold. Less gold means that a 6.6k gold item might as well empty out your entire fucking bank account at this point, IRL. And it just slows down your early game a lot because it's expensive and you don't get a lot of kills. These are like the 3 big builds that are being promoted right now, from what I've seen for AD Udyr. Here is the build that I think, for my personal testing, from sacrificing my sanity and my master account, here is what I think is the build that could be AD Udyr Savior, or I'm even gonna go out on a limb and say it is the thing that fixes AD Udyr in Split 2. It is Ghostblade first, into Trinity or Stridebreaker. Trinity Force should be like 80% of your game. Stridebreaker you should only build if there's like champions you just can't access at all, like let's say play against Akali, Evelyn. Having the little slow so they can't just walk up to a wall and jump over instantly is very, very useful. But other than that, go Trinity Force or Stridebreaker. And then you go into Tank, which these 2 items are enough to kill pretty much anything. Or Bruiser, most likely a mix. I will show a full build example on the screen right now for both options. And you know my philosophy when it comes to building. If you're ahead, you should build more tank items after your core. You have no reason to build more damage because you already kill everybody anyways, but you have even more reason to build tanky so you don't drop your 700 gold shutdown from the lead you have and drop objectives, so you just stay alive longer and can't be punished, right? Enemy champions are not going to build enough tankiness fast enough for your damage to fall off. So why do we go Ghostblade? So Ghostblade gives you 20% movement speed for 6 seconds on a 45-second cooldown. This is, if you like, stack this up unit by unit versus current Ghost, I guarantee you that Ghostblade covers more units, so whatever, more meters in game, traveled than Ghost would if you take Ghost. So you get 20% movement speed on an active for 6 seconds on a 45-second cooldown. And I'm pretty sure that the cooldown actually starts ticking as soon as you use it. So it's basically on a 39-second cooldown, because you have the 6 seconds active and then, you know, the cooldown's already ticking. So that is extremely powerful. That means that not only can you just Ghost from base to get faster to a lane and basically do what you would do with Ghost, but on a very low cooldown, but also you have so many things you can do with this. You can run from one side of your jungle to the other faster, speeding up your clear. You can you can cross map faster, right? You can go from your jungle to the enemy jungle way faster, right? Like almost unexpectedly fast for the enemy jungler, and like encounter them on their red buff or whatever. Like if you just want to cross map, you can react to a gank much better because you have the mobility from that, and so many more reasons. I use it for like so many different things. Like you can use it just in combat to dodge some skill shot that you have to dodge because you get more mobility and you can pair this up with your E. There is so many ways you can use Ghostblade effectively for. As I always say, there is mastery not only in champions, but in the build. You can be a build one-trick pony and understand items to a T. Then you get 40 movement speed out of combat. 40 movement speed flat out of combat, meaning your E is gonna scale off of that and the active is gonna scale off of that, which is insanity for Udyr. Flat movement speed, especially in this ballpark, is way better because it doesn't have the mitigating effects, meaning the more mobility percentage you have, the lower mobility you actually get. I'm pretty sure flat mobility is flat mobility. You're always gonna get the 40. So that's insane. It gets you around the map faster. It makes ganking so much easier, by the way. It's actually insane. Plus the early game is strengthened by so much, simply because you have lethality, you have very good stats. Lethality and AD, so you get 60 AD and you get 80 lethality if I'm not wrong. I'm gonna put the item on the screen right now in case I am. And that basically just means that not only do you have insane damage in the early game, you one-shot everybody, but you have the mobility to actually get onto targets, right? Which is like one of the huge issues we have with the other setups. Then there's another thing that this item fixes that other setups have. It's extremely cheap. It's 2.8k, I think. Hold up, let me actually check that real quick. Yeah, it's 2.7k gold, which is like 600 gold cheaper than Trinity Force or Titanic Hydra. That is like an entire back you get this item earlier. I usually get this item around minute 7 to minute 9 on a slow game. You already have your huge power spike, which we talked about earlier in the video. Good early power spikes, you already get it at minute 7 to 9. That is absolutely insane. You get insanely good stats, and it's just cheap as dirt. And in Trinity Force, I don't have to explain to you, it basically gives you all the stats you need. You definitely, second item, you need an item that gives you attack speed. That's why I put Trinity Force or Stride Breaker, because that's the one thing this build is missing in the early game, which we're gonna get into the runes soon, but we don't have attack speed in our runes. And it's kind of like self-explanatory. And then after Trinity Force or Stride Breaker, the item shop is your oyster. You can build whatever you want. You want to go 2 tank items into Bruiser? Sure. You're a little bit behind. You want to go DMP or Blade or something? Sure. You can build whatever you need at this point because these 2 items cover your bases. They cover your bases for damage. You can basically kill whoever you want with these 2 items without actually having to rely on building more bruiser items. Like I can easily, I will show you guys my match history right now with this build. I haven't lost a single game with this build so far. And you see, I go very tanky because I get a lead early game with Ghostblade, and then I just transition that into tank items, which is fantastic. And then usually your last item's always gonna be Sterak's Gauge or Titanic Hydra unless very specific circumstances. Now let's get into the runes. What does having Ghostblade allow us to do? We have the gap closing. We have the gap closing down. We have 40 movement speed out of combat. We have 20% on active on a 39-second cooldown, essentially. Now, what does this allow us? First of all, we go PTA, Triumph, Ability Haste Rune, Coop, Magical Footwear, Approach Velocity, double AD Rune into Scaling Health. PTA, self-explanatory, but there is actually a little caveat here. PTA only amps up your damage. It doesn't amp up your team's damage. What does this mean for Udyr? Well, when we went Bruiser builds, I would even say like full Bruiser, like last split where we went Stridebreaker, Trinity Force Ghost. I would say that amping up your team's damage was better than your own because you had a lot of gold invested into health at this point. Every item you built had health, literally, which is gonna take up a lot of your damage potential. But now we have a lethality item first. So it amping up our own damage with a lethality item actually has great synergy. It makes your damage so much more oppressive. So much more oppressive, because PTA only amps your damage and you have it the entire combat, meaning I proc it on one target, I'm gonna have it for the next, right? So you just have the damage amp, which is really good. Then of course we have Triumph, self-explanatory, you should always have Triumph. Then the ability haste rune. What does Ghostblade not have in its stat sheet? Ability haste, which is one of the more important stats for AD Udyr. Like, you need to be able to proc your E and your Q off cooldown, basically. And 15 ability haste usually is even enough if you go Stridebreaker second. Like, you don't, if you know how to play with 15 ability haste, you're basically good with 15 ability haste. So that's like a must. It opens up so many builds for Udyr in a sense. Then we have Coop. Coop also benefits, Coop de Gras, also benefits greatly from lethality in a sense, because it just amps up your damage even more. It's a selfish, lethality is a selfish set, but your runes amplify your selfishness in a sense. And then we come to the second rune page, which is so important. Why do most people go Celerity Water Walking? Well, because these other three builds, they don't really give you that much gap closing potential. You can't really get onto targets and then use your magical footwear and your approach velocity to stay on a target. But with this setup you can, because you're actually probably crossing more units faster than in the Ghost days, just because of how much mobility and how low cooldown Ghostblade is. So you can go magical footwear and approach velocity and permanently have that sticking power that we all love to see on AD Udyr, that we all need on AD Udyr to actually kill targets, right? And that kind of like almost sums up why this build is so effective. The ability haste rune makes, of course, Ghostblade much better as a first item too. And then overall, this build just doesn't lack anything. It actually gives you strength. Compared to the other builds where you like sacrifice something, like the Kraken Bruiser, you sacrifice your health for a very, very long time. The Trinity Stride, you sacrifice your gap closing for the entire game. The Trinity Titanic, you sacrifice your gap closing and your sticky power a little bit, just as that. This build kind of just doesn't sacrifice anything, really. Not really. It actually even empowers Udyr even more, because you get this item so early and you have everything AD Udyr needs to execute his kit, which is fantastic. All the builds that I have mentioned earlier, I'm not saying that these builds aren't viable. All these builds are viable and you should consider them and you should test them and you should test everything yourself. You should not just take my word in autopilot. That's not how League of Legends, especially AD Udyr, is being played. You should test them and deduct your own opinion on itemization on AD Udyr. But I can tell you, I've like tested everything you can test kind of with these changes, and I just came to the conclusion that Ghostblade Trinity / Stridebreaker into Tank Bruiser with said runes is the best you can do for yourself, for your gameplay, for the changes that happened in this split, and it's gonna turn AD Udyr from a struggle machine to an absolute monster in my opinion. But again, don't think that I'm saying that these builds are trash, because they really aren't. These are still like the top 3 builds. I just think that Ghostblade and Trinity Stride are just like, this build is just taking the crown for me and you're gonna see me build this for like a very, very long time. Also guys, let me know if you like this type of content where I do more talking pieces. I kind of enjoy this almost more than doing full gameplay commentaries, but of course there's not like something to talk about all the time. Maybe I would do this like once a week if you guys like content like this. Please like, comment and subscribe, smiley face. It really, really tells me if you guys like this video or not. Like if I see a lot of people talk and actually interact with the video and, you know, have interesting points to bring to the table, or not just click on it, oh cool, new build, yabba dabba do. Also join our Discord server if you want to discuss all these concepts with me. I really, really love these type of videos because I have like, I feel like I almost have so many like things I have learned because I played an unhealthy amount of AD Udyr in my life that I can't really like put into like a full gameplay commentary, but with these videos I can kind of explain to you guys how my thinking works when it comes to like playing AD Udyr, and I feel like it's really gonna help me not having to answer the same questions over and over again, but it's also gonna help you guys not having to ask these questions because you have the information right on my YouTube channel. Anyways guys, this was actually super fun to make. If you guys like this content, you can expect way more of these little talking bits, and have a blessed day. See you on the next video. I'm out. Peace.